Right now, the California Community College system, which is where I work, we're actually undergoing a student success initiative spearheaded by the Chancellor, but brought about by the legislature, who hit us with a bill last year that was going to completely, fully change our funding formula, which was a pretty radical thing for us. And in response to that, we came back with we will have a student success task force that will look at some of the things that we need to do to change ourselves. And the Chancellor has started that initiative, and we've been meeting monthly to go over that. A lot of the ideas that have bubbled up surround technological solutions to helping students succeed in an environment where we have less and less resource. Some prioritization of our both funding and of our curriculum to try and reduce the number of units to degree, and also reduce what I call wasted FTEs, or FTEs that are non-generative of production of degrees. Okay, we are in a rationing mode at the time. A lot of students are not getting classes. We're beginning to actively look at who should be given priority registration in our system to, the first classes, the students who are the most productive or have the best behavior of productivity of degree completion. We're looking at reducing a lot of things like non-credit and PE and things that we used to just gain FTEs on. We still do have some funding issues. We are funded basically by seat time, and there are some perverse incentives inside that funding formula that are good and some that are bad. We have certain pieces of our curriculum that are cash cows like PE, and certain other things that are not, like nursing, and they tend to counterbalance each other. So we also need to work to get the legislature to correct that, to fund the right things and fund at a lesser rate the things that are probably not nearly as productive.
Is performance funding something that California is going after? Are there barriers? Is there a lot of conflict about what's meant by it and whether it's effective?
Yeah, there's a lot of conflict, and I'd say we're going in kind of kicking and screaming. It's a system that is very well conditioned to the environment it lives in now, as far as the chasing of FTEs and how you do that. Certainly faculty and administrators are nervous about this. People who are concerned about access are nervous about this too, because as you get a greater proportion of your budget that is variable based upon performance and outcome, you have a harder time scheduling. And so what we don't want to have happen is a situation where year after year you don't know exactly how much you're going to get, so you act ultra conservatively and you put on fewer and fewer classes. Okay, we don't want to have a huge chunk of the budget tied up in something that everyone feels is one time. So there needs to be some predictability and consistency to this. I think for the first time our system is now somewhat open to looking at this. To date, in prior years we've greatly resisted this. We know that if we don't adopt something, it will probably be adopted for us by the legislature, and we'd certainly be better off creating something on our own than having, somewhat shallowly informed staffers craft something for us. So I think we're open to it at this moment in time. It's a good moment in time. It's a moment in time when we've lost a lot of money and we are reducing FTEs in the system anyway. So if there is a right time to do it, it's probably now. So we actually have a pretty mature accountability system in our state, and a very, very good data system. And so we've been able to measure things quite well, and we have good data matching and know where students transfer, and we know how much they make when they get degrees and certificates, and we know how much they make when they don't. We're looking at some higher order metrics, beginning to look at productivity metrics, like what percentage of the FTEs that we put on actually goes to students who get degrees, certificates, and transfer, okay? Productive FTEs, shall we call it. We're looking at some intermediate measures of progress, which we had done, at a certain level before, but we really didn't have a whole lot between individual course success rate and graduation rate. We're looking at the combination of both outcome rates and outcome volumes. We've always been very concerned about participation rate and keeping that high. We generally feel as if there's going to be some trade-off between success and access, as much as people would like to think that you can keep both of those very high at the same time. You know, we may not be able to do that. We'll see. Those are some of the things we're looking at performance-wise as we move forward, and we've got the capability of doing this because of our data systems. So, one of the things that is a large function in our system is remediation. And getting through remediation is kind of the cornerstone to getting any type of degree or certificate anywhere. You have to get through it. 85% of the students who come in are in remedial math, 70% in English. First of all, we've got a system that allows the campuses to buy their own assessments on their own. So we have literally 300 different assessment tests in the system. They're non-transferable, non-portable. We're constantly making students take and retake them. So we are attempting right now, which was the function of our Gates grant, to create a common assessment system. So there's one thing. There's a number of technology solutions that we're looking at that hopefully will help create kind of a default good decision path. We have a common electronic application that just about every student goes through. But at the end of that common application, students are just dropped to their local campus for, you know, the rest of their educational careers. And we're missing this opportunity to guide them using technology through the right path of choices. So we're potentially building a student services portal that, once they're done with their application, it basically says, now let's set up your degree program. Let's set up the courses you need to take to progress through. Let's get you exposed to what the assessment test is going to look like before you actually take it, so you will do better. From a pedagogical side, just about everybody is starting to look at compressing and shortening their remedial sequences, because they know the longer you make that and the more steps you go through, it cuts down the success rate by 50% per step. So if you shorten this, you have a better likelihood of getting them through and getting them through early and up front of their academic careers and have them not wait. So it's a combination of things going on in the classroom and of things that we can provide centrally at the state level that hopefully will make a difference.
Around the common assessment, I know this is a big piece that is not really part of the high school message about how important that assessment test is. Is there something about communicating or partnering with K-12 differently?
Yeah, K-12 has a problem even in their own domain of the tests being viewed as not high stakes. You know, in California you have a high school exit exam, which is fairly watered down in its competency level, and a lot of students, you know, once they get through that, it's okay, it's kind of a joke. There's no consequence to the student. If we begin through the use of the Common Core in K-12 and the standards that will come about from that, to aligning them to the incoming standards that you need to do for assessment and placement in community college, you start relaying to the student, hey, if you do well on these tests over here in high school, you begin clearing the path for your placement in college. Okay? It begins giving a value to it that hopefully can be conveyed to the student that, you know, you don't have to waste time, we don't have to reassess you. You know, a lot of students, they go into the assessment test blind to it. It's a new format. They have a bad day, and next thing you know, they're placed 2 levels below where they think they should be. And that's problematic. So I think the alignment across the segments is big, and both having a Common Core standard, state and national, along with a common assessment test in the community college, gives you the opportunity to make that happen. I think K-12 is already probably better prepared than higher ed to teach to a standard, okay? Because they've had standards based in NCLB and things like that. There's a certain criticism in K-12 that they spend too much time teaching to a standard, which, you know, I can't really answer one way or another. But at least having a standard that means something across the segments is a good thing. Higher ed is a little more resistant of standards simply because higher ed is, to a certain extent, where you're supposed to expand and broaden your horizon, and it's not all cookie cutter, and the divergence of what is taught and what you learn is non-standardized. But there's certain areas that are pre-collegiate that really are core, and I think that's where Common Core and higher ed can meet and agree. We may not, you know, come up with the same standard for, you know, physics or psychology, but math and English and, you know, to a certain extent ESL should be fair game.
So how is the collaboration from where you sit? Is it two different cultures clashing? Yeah,
it's two different cultures, but it's, at least in my state, it's beginning to be broken down. In California, there's 4 silos, that's for sure. There's UC and CSU, who are really constitutionally autonomous, and then there's the community colleges and K-12, which are very much run by the legislature. Before it was, and never shall they talk, simply because we're all competing for the same budget dollar. One of the perverse things of having everyone's budget cut is that it actually brought us all together to a certain extent to beg for a common dollar, shall we say. K-12 has their money pretty guaranteed. Community college gets, almost by guarantee, a certain percentage of what K-12 gets. UC and CSU are kind of on their own. They are, you know, a piece of the budget that can expand or contract as the state budget needs go. The faculty, I'm not sure, are really getting together and talking a whole lot, but the people at the state offices are beginning to, and there's even talk of sharing common resources. So, when we were talking about common assessment, we know that California Department of Ed is going to have a large contract to buy Common Core assessment tests, and hopefully the state will have title and ownership over this bank of questions. Well, there's no reason that the community colleges can't use the same and share this and just use a different delivery mechanism. Okay, K-12 may be using paper test, or they may be using computer-based. We know how ours needs to work, but we can potentially share a common resource because we're all generally measuring the same thing. So a lot of it is just relationship capital between the people who are working at each office. At CDE, that's an elected official. In my office, it's an appointed official, but it just so happens that these 2 officials were both former state senators who were chums at the same time. And so now a call goes over to CDE and says, hey, you're doing Common Core, can we have a seat at the table? And the answer is, sure, come on over. So we're advantaged by that at this moment in time.